Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May RC Chat, where we host monthly mental health conversations to spark dialogue and uh, conversations, within our community. My name is Nicole Wallace, and I'm sitting in for Dr. Carla Debnam, the Renaissance Center's Executive Director. Tonight's topic is from awareness to action, money management, and mental health. And I have with me two amazing guests, and I would like to introduce them to you at this time. Tonight, it's our honor to have both Kathy Evans and James Jones with us this evening. And I'll
Good
turn it over
evening.
to them both to give us
Hello.
an introduction. Kathy?
Hi, good evening, everyone. As Minister Cole stated, I am Kathy Evans, deaconess at Morning Star Baptist Church, also one of the leaders of the stewardship ministry here. And I also am CEO of Higher Goals Learning. And under that umbrella, we teach finance, personal finance, education, and I am a budget strategist. So I'm happy to be with you here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Jones. I'm deacon at the church, also trustee at Morning Star Baptist Church. I elated for the invitation. My full-time profession, I'm an VP of Internal Audit at Total Healthcare, Finance Healthcare. I'm also volunteer as far as financial planning and consulting, mentoring our youth in financial literacy, and also providing financial consulting to small nonprofits and small businesses.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So, as you can tell, we are ready and poised for a very powerful discussion this evening. So, if you didn't know, 2020 May 2025 is Mental Health Awareness Month, and our theme is turning awareness into action. We are wearing green tonight in solidarity for mental health awareness. As we transition, we've heard things all our lives, James and Kathy, like more money, more problems. The love of money is the root of all evil, that we have to save for a rainy day. And these are just a few of the many modern day colloquialisms that we have heard that shape our actions and our mental health. So we thank you both for joining us as we are diving into this rich discussion. And we thank you again, Dr. Debnam, in your absence for coming up with this topic, because as we know, mental health is heavily impacted by finances. Recent financial network research has found that 4 in 10 Americans report high or moderate stress levels because of their finances. These Americans are disproportionately struggling financially and often having challenges meeting their day to day needs. Additionally, people with the lowest incomes in a given area are often 1.5 to 3 times more likely to experience mental health issues like depression, anxiety, as high income people in the same area. So there has been some linkage to, understandably, a lack of financial resources. So this helps us to dive into our questions for this evening. I want to make note that we have a live chat. So if you drop your questions in the chat for our panelists on this evening, I will engage them and we'll ask them and answer them for you. So let's take turns and jump in. Whoever wants to go first. How would you say that someone's financial practices impact their mental health based on the experiences you've had?
I'll jump in first. Thanks, Nicole. Well, someone's financial practices can significantly impact their mental health, but both positively and negatively. So I'll mention a couple of positive impacts first. So when you are budgeting and saving and paying down debt regularly, that can give you improved confidence and control, not only over your financial life, but a sense of accomplishment over your entire life. And that can boost your mental resilience. Also, in the times in which we're living, in the current economic and stressful times, good financial practices can increase your access to care. What I mean by that is if you are practicing good financial stewardship, then you will be more likely to afford mental health services if you need them, such as therapy and medication if possible, which further supports your entire well-being.
That's great. And I'll take them from there, Kathy. So you mentioned some of the positives, which are great, but also, unfortunately, in the times we're in now, right, folks, the anxiety, right, we know impact that finances, lack of sleep, things like that, and you feel like you're out of control. Things are spiraling away, right? And so again, I always advise or just ask people to just take a breath, take a deep breath, analyze the situation. To your point, Kathy, right? Think of those positive things, right? That you may have a job. I know some folks may have lost their job or in a dire situation. So think about some positives first. Take a deep
Mhm.
breath to relax that. And most importantly, acknowledge that, hey, I may be in a situation where I'm feeling financially overwhelmed. And however that looks for each individual, it's important. But again, acknowledge that and then takes the steps to reach out for help, right? For professional help. If that's through the Renaissance Center or clinician or financially, right? Through a financial advisor or someone in your circle, but acknowledge that and kind of just, face and then ask for, order and steps to move forward to kind of put you in a better situation.
Yeah.
Thank,
And James,
thank
I wanted to add something else when you
Sure.
mentioned depression and anxiety. That could also cause some relationship strain, in your relationships.
Okay.
Money conflicts are a common source of tension in marriages, between parents and children, in partnerships, which in turn can harm your overall
Mm,
well-being.
good.
Great, thank you. And as a clinician, I'm glad that you mentioned one point, Kathy, around when you don't have the resources. Sometimes it may make it difficult for you to even receive mental health care that
Mhm.
is required. There are copays. It does cost to go to the doctors. And when you're having financial challenges, the same way as we have individuals who have to determine whether or not, they are purchasing certain medicines or any incidentals. The first thing that one would say is, well, I can take it to God. Well, I am a minister, but as you see on t-shirts, we need Jesus and therapy. And so that may not be it alone. And even though I happen to be a minister who is a clinician, not all and all of us are officers in some shape, form, or fashion within the Morning Star Baptist Church as well. Side note, is such a blessed place to have individuals in the kingdom who are skilled and talented to do God's work as their vocation. But all of us are not necessarily mental health professionals, and so it's essential that you do keep up with those monies and have those resources available and prioritize your mental health if that is one of your needs.
Yeah, I know before we move on, Nicole, that's a great point as well. And just resources that you mentioned. I know some jobs offer some that wellness programs through your job, employee access programs and things like that. Employees, so there are some tools or resources that may be free. So again, feel free to use all those resources to help you guide you through the season.
Absolutely. And so this question falls in line with one of the viewers who's dropped something in the chat. And that is, how and what is the best advice? This comes from one of our Facebook viewers. What's the best advice to not stress financially, knowing that you're trusting God with your everything? So how do you struggle? How do you balance that struggle? And what suggestions do you have for anyone who is struggling with their finances?
Well, the viewer mentioned if you're trusting God with your everything. So I want to point out, those of us who are of Christian faith, we know that the word says God owns everything. So if we turn everything over to God, guess what? It already belongs to Him anyway. So from the perspective of God owns everything and we're only stewards of it, he doesn't want us to fail. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have some difficulties, but sometimes those difficulties will illuminate changes that we need to make in our lives in order to get to where he wants us to be. And simply put, the phrase we use all the time: if you worry, don't pray. If you pray, don't worry. So just know that God's on everything, owns everything. He's in control. And there are lessons that we need to learn along the way to for stewardship.
Yeah, I like that, Kathy. In fact, last night we had a prayer call, and the theme of the prayer call was Jesus is Lord. And when someone is Lord, they are responsible for you. Your
Mhm.
Lord must take care of you. He cannot, turn you away. It's your wellness is his responsibility. So when you recognize that everything belongs to him, you take it to him for him to supply your needs, trusting and believing that he'll do it. And sometimes, we want abundance and overflow, but there are seasons like there were in the Old Testament where God supplied manna daily. Daily, he supplied for the needs for the children of Israel. And so they didn't have to store up. We're used to storing up, but recognize that if your needs are being supplied daily, that God is still on the throne and he's doing what needs to be done. James, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure, I think you guys nailed it, hit it on the point, right? We're trusting our Lord and Savior who provides everything, right? We believe that, but also just added to about action, right? So sit back, as you mentioned, Kathy, right? I prayed, I let it go, do my part, right? Stand fast to His word, know that again, He said, supply all my needs, right? According to His riches, which He does. Now we have a part to do, right? As well. So again, we pray, we turn it over, but again, as stewards over what we do have. We all have something. He's always given us something to be a great steward over. So we, in those practices and those patience, while we sit and wait, right, we're learning how to be a steward over what we do have.
Absolutely. Go
Nicole,
ahead.
I have a question for you. So in your role as a clinician, do you see it often that when people worry about finances, it taxes their mental health, their mental bandwidth, making it harder to focus, make sound decisions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that what I have encountered more is the anxiety that comes from a lack of
Mhm.
resources
Okay.
and trying to help my clients avoid catastrophizing situations that may come up.
Mhm.
And what I always do in our sessions is that I remind them of every other situation where things got tough and
Mhm.
they wondered would they make it through. The last time that they had more month than money, what happened? The last time that there was a situation where they had a whole bunch of things that were going on and you had to plan, how's one of my favorite old songs, baby need a pair of shoes and you got light bill due,
It's gonna
telephone
work
bill,
out.
I'm waiting on my next paycheck, right? But
Right.
when those things were occurring, didn't he working it out?
They
Didn't
work
he work it out? And
out.
so helping them to process again, not catastrophizing through those phases is essential. But in my experiences, I've had more clients who anxiety was linked to their financial woes over depression when situations around depression weighed in, they tended to be individuals whose, and this goes to another question, but so we'll come back to that in one of the questions that comes up. But that was a situational thing. So sometimes finances can become a challenge for individuals who and causes depression for individuals who may be going through a divorce, and there
Mhm.
a shift in their finances that they were not anticipating through the loss of a spouse, a parent. So those types of situations have caused things as depression to weigh in as a major mental health concern over anxiety. But in my practice, it's more so individuals that do have some financial resources, but are just impacted by life's strains and pressures. So
Mhm.
with that being the case, just shifting right along, and remember our chat line is open. And we are streaming both on Facebook and YouTube. And so we have someone monitoring the chat and we will pick your questions up. Um, so going on to our next point. Well, let's go back to our Facebook viewer. We're not going to minimize his concern, right? And everybody doesn't respond to financial challenges the same way. Somebody else, one person, like, okay, I'm just like Deaconess Kathy. I can, trust God. He has everything. It's His, and I'm going to cast my cares on Him. And I know that He cares for me, and it's going to work out. And they can go to sleep. But then we have someone else who, again, may really be struggling with that. And so I want to ask this question for you all. Given that people handle stress and economic strain differently, what are some red flags that everyone can look out for to know if they may be headed to mental health crises pertaining to their finances? So, what are some signs that someone may want to be thinking about? These are some red flags. My finances are kind of getting out of control. James, we want to handle that one
Yeah,
first?
I was going to say I'll start, and that's an excellent question, right? Some of the red flags, again, it's kind of like a common thing we say it all the time, but it's reality, living paycheck to paycheck. And what I mean by that, right? You just kind of survive in the survival mode, right? You do have a job, you have income, or whatever your income is, you're barely making it, and you're struggling. So, Elder Nicole, when you mentioned a life emergency, that just throws it off, right? So that's one red flag. And the other red flag, if you're just avoiding your mail, right, or you get phone calls from that, right, and again, it's life, it happens, but you start to see this pattern of, okay, I don't want to answer the phone, I don't want to respond to text, I don't want to open the mail, right? Again, I may not sleep because again, I'm just thinking about, hey, I have my main utility bills, right, your light bill, right, your phone, things like that, your necessities. And if you have credit, but then you're starting to use your credit to pay those things, right? So you're snowballing out of kind of control. So those are some immediate red flags that kind of just, hey, let me stop, breathe, start writing things down. But to answer your question, immediate red flags. Again, that right, paycheck to paycheck, using credit and just avoiding, your debt. Just saying, hey, in reality, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. It
I don't
doesn't
I don't want
exist.
to deal with it, right? It's
Yeah,
overwhelming. I
yeah,
don't want to deal with it.
yeah, yeah. You try to forget about it.
Yes.
Right. But we know sometimes what happens, things that, a wound unaddressed festers,
Amen. Yeah, it does. It
right?
does. Yeah.
And so if you notice that that is a wound that you are not addressing, it can snowball and it can derail you. And so there are things like financial planners that exist, financial consultants that exist. And so that's why we have James and Kathy on the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
Kathy, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I want to continue where down the road that James was going with spending and debt red flags. So it kind of goes into when James mentioned paycheck to paycheck. So what goes with that, if you're going paycheck to paycheck, how do you get what you need in between? Credit cards. So if you're maxing out or nearly maxing out your credit cards regularly, first of all, it's going to harm your your credit report. You're going to get into a debt trap. And if you're only making minimum payments on your credit cards, then that's going to lengthen the time that you're in debt. And also, with the interest rates as high as they are now, it could be just like James said, snowball, snowball, snowball forever and ever. And here's one that more people may be doing it than previously, is using credit cards to cover your basic expenses. So if you're using credit cards or getting loans to buy your groceries, gas or your mortgage or rent, that's a warning sign. And finally, I would say if you're regularly overdrawing your bank accounts,
That's a
then
good one.
that's gonna be like overdraft fees. That means you have a cash flow problem and you don't have a financial cushion.
Mm, excellent. Yeah,
That's a
excellent.
good one.
Yeah. And
And sometimes, in addition to a cash flow problem, here's another way that, if I can just interject as a
sure.
clinician, you may not have a cash flow problem, but there's so many other things that are going on because your mental health is unchecked that you've checked out. You've
Mhm.
checked
Uh-huh.
out. So you're writing bills, but you didn't make that transfer to that account where that bill comes out.
Mhm.
Or you're forgetting. If you don't have automatic drafts, you're under stress, you're under pressure, you're forgetting to pay that bill on time.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right. So there
Right.
are things where your mental health can impact your money, even if you don't have a cash flow challenge.
That that's good, Nicole. That's good because I think right to your point, right? Every day kind of just challenge your life experiences may put you in that thing where you do right have it, but again, your timing is off, and that's why it's important to kind of sit down with an expert or someone that provides these services to say, okay, when you have those automatic withdrawals, right? Again, getting there to help reduce those fees. Right, so you may have some mortgage or certain things, your car loans coming out automatically. I know people still old school like to mail checks or do things like that, but whatever works best for you, right? But again, those necessities, maybe they're auto scheduled, right? Because again, there could be life could happen. And again, hey, someone's there, a friend, right? We're all church or family members ill or your loved one or your spouse, and you could be away and just, hey, I just forgot to mail that check. But if that's automated, there's a ways to just help. And I just want to go back to what Kathy said about the fees. This made me think about the fees and use your credit card. So you're thinking, but you're just kind of incurring more fees, right? Reducing your cash flow even more, right? By accumulating these bank draft, these fees, these overage, because again, your account's in a negative. So when you do get your income, right, you have to deduct those fees. And so then you're kind of, back to square one again in the situation where you have to deduct these fees or your credit card interest is higher. So again, if you're making minimum payment, you're kind of just feel like you're in a no-win situation. But sometimes it's just good, as you mentioned, to look at your budget. I always tell people, write everything down for that month and kind of see where your money's going.
Thank
Yeah, that's good, James. And since we're talking about struggles and red flags, I want to address one of the viewers talked about a struggle between what to do, how do you decide between saving and how do you save while paying off debt? So you mentioned budget. Well, a budget is basically a plan. You got to have a plan. You got to have a clear budget and a spending plan. When you don't have that, that's where you're going to go to where Nicole was saying you're overspending, you're missing opportunities, you're missing your priorities, which could also lead to emotional buying, things that you don't need and borrowing from families. But as far as the paying off debt and saving, what is your priority? And also look at your why. What are you saving for? Are you saving just to save, or do you have some financial goals? So if your priority is getting out of debt, more than likely, I see this all the time, with clients. Depending on where you are what stage you are in life, it may make more sense to pause your saving until you're out of debt, because if you have a lot of debt and you're only making minimum payments, you're not making traction on paying off the debt, and you're not really saving either. So most times when you get yourself out of debt, all of that money that was going to debt can now go towards savings. And don't it's not going to be like an overnight thing. You have to be patient and be committed to the plan.
I like that. Not overnight.
Absolutely.
And we want everything to be quick.
Yes.
In the same way as we look up and we got 30 extra pounds. Where did that come from? The
Not
reality
overnight.
is it didn't come overnight. It's
Mhm.
crept up. I think that's the language that James has been using tonight. It kind of creeps up on you.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, it doesn't creep off. It
Good.
doesn't creep off. It takes time to creep off,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to implement a plan to get that weight off, right?
Mhm.
You
Right.
have to put in place a walking plan. You have to put in place a diet. You have to put in place exercise. You have to put in place lifestyle changes. Similarly, debt doesn't creep up on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's over time, and you look up and oh my goodness, where did this go?
Mm-hmm.
And so to address that, there's a mindset. And that's another part where the mental health piece comes into place,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to change your mindset. Am I, as Kathy mentioned, am I an emotional spender? Do I shop to make me feel good?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, am I trying to, no pun intended, keep up with the
But with
Joneses?
the Joneses.
I
Again,
take
we have all these modern day colloquialisms.
no. It's
Sorry, Mr. Jones.
no. It's
But
fine. It's
am
true.
I trying to keep
Yeah,
up
it's
with the
true.
Joneses when I need to be a Wallace?
That's
And this is
no.
what the Wallaces can do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Right.
Recognizing that and it's funny as I say Wallace, I'm gonna give a shout out. I know a very wise person, uh Wallace, I call him
Mhm.
my husband. He has this saying that we have to learn that you can't do what everybody else does if you didn't do what everybody else did.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
It's
keeping
good.
up with the
Yeah.
Joneses
Yeah.
is going to be a challenge for
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, no pun intended. If you keep
Sure.
trying to, look at
Right.
somebody else's grass, no, because so that's where again you have to make some mindset changes and kind of do some things a little bit differently so that you can fashion your financial goals in the way that they want to go. And that's going to take time. It may require therapy. It may require a budget plan. It may require a consultant. It may require spending fast,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to require a lot of self reflection to see what is the motivation for your spending.
Mm-hmm.
But so let me
Yeah.
shift. This is a question
Okay.
that's not on the table, but I'm gonna put
Okay.
it on the table
Okay. All right.
because I'm hearing we're talking a lot about consultants. So
Mm-hmm.
can you talk a little bit about going to a consultant versus going to like a consumer credit protection place
Mhm.
or some of these other entities that want to kind of put you on certain plans? Is there one that you would maybe recommend over the other?
So, it depends on what you're looking to gain, like what type of help and service you need. So, under Higher Goals Learning, I'm a financial consultant, mainly a financial educator. So, I
Mhm.
teach. I'm not going to advise you on like what stocks, to invest in, anything like that. Um, it's mainly what I see is people needing accountability, and education. We hear it all the time, financial literacy. What does that mean? That
Mm-hmm.
simply means you have the knowledge and ability to use the tools that you have for proper financial management. That's all is financial literacy. But the literacy part is education. If you don't know, you'd be surprised at how many people were never taught. We weren't taught consumer finance or personal finance or family finances in schools. Some of us come from families where money was, particularly in our community, money's hush hush. You don't talk
Mm-hmm.
about money.
Mm-hmm.
So, my goal is to change people's mindset as a financial educator and consultant. Because here's the thing, if you can't manage your day-to-day finances, then you will be in no position to invest. Why are you going to go to a financial advisor for investing, and you are doing like what we said, if you're spending, buying your groceries on using a credit card. You see what I'm saying? So you have to see basically where is the money. And most people have it. They
Mhm.
just can't see it because we know what's coming in, but we don't know where everything is going. And before we even get to a budget, my recommendation or my advice or from experience and knowledge is you have to track where you're spending for at least 30 days. If you
Mhm.
don't know where your money's going, how are you going to even know what to put in a budget?
Mhm.
So that's
That's
just a
good.
little, difference between, a financial consultant, educator, coach,
Mhm.
all those words.
Right.
As opposed to, would you agree, James?
Yes, no, you guys, Kathy and Nicole, a great transition. I 100%
Yes.
agree with you. And it starts with the education and literacy because, Nicole, that's going to change the behavior and the mindset.
Mhm.
Always use that when people say, oh, if I had more money, I'll be straight. But again, if you're not managing what you currently have and your behavior hasn't changed, right? So
Right.
you can get that $1 million and you can blow through that $1 million because, Kathy, you said something earlier, your priority. So, right
Mhm.
again, what's your priority? Right? What for your family, for yourself. Write it down. Right? As you're planning vacation, as you're planning other things, we need to look at our finances and say, hey, this is important. How do I want my finances to be? And to also to answer your question, Nicole and Kathy, too, folks say, is it easy to go to consumer protection aids or these agencies that will wrap up your debt and kind of, do these things? Always share again advice, right? But if you're able to get the advice, track your spending, do these things, you can do it yourself, right? Without paying a fee, without doing those things.
Yes.
So again, the literacy and the education, and it's really important. Growing up, again, right? My grandparents lived with them. It was money in a box. They didn't believe in the banking system. So again, right, changing our mindset. So that's one of the things. Hey, I want to have that financial literacy, that experience. So through school, learn about Wall Street investment stocks, but again, the education and literacy. So giving back now, I on Saturdays, with the young students, sixth to eighth graders, financial literacy. You'll be surprised. We have like fake currency and coins, but if they can count currency and coins, right? Again, because things are electronic, but cash, right? So again, just changing their mindset and education, and you just see them lights grow. So again, at whatever stage you're in, whatever age you are, it's never too late. And I'm sure Kathy will agree with that, right? You can
No,
start
the
now.
the
Yeah,
earlier the better. Let's
yeah,
start early.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And talk about and the last bit is, as we know that this is Mental Health Month and we're doing this RC chat, right? You're looking for experts or someone that knows. So we all have people in our circle, right? And we always say everything we need is in the house. Right.
Hmm.
So again, on the clinician side, on the mental health, and on the financial side, and again, sometimes it's taboo in our culture, right? And you mentioned again, we don't talk about finances. We don't want to talk about how to do better or get better. And you're right, no pun intended. I want to keep up with the Joneses. I want to say, oh, this is what we're doing to impress others. When, hey, what are your priorities? And go back to you say, okay, what are my priorities? What is my household priorities? And that's my goal. And so once I have that written down, then I'm going to work towards to getting that. If that's paying off debt, if that's saving, if that's investing, even if it's just, hey, paying my bills on time, it's baby steps to get there. And
Okay.
again, it's going to take a process, but in that process, you're refining yourself, you're working those things out.
That's
Exactly.
good. I like that. I like all of those things that you shared. And as you both were talking, especially on those cues and those tips on literacy, that African proverb dropped in my mind. If you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. But if you teach them how to fish, they can eat for a lifetime. And so similarly, I think it's just that goes to show how it's just as relevant that we learn how to do have, we have financial literacy so that we can learn these tips so that we can begin to change and fashion some things ourselves. The other thing, since we are all leaders in ministry in some way, I think we would be remiss if we did not just kind of touch just a little bit on stewardship and those
Oh,
principles around stewardship. And even before stewardship, it's about discipline. It's about discipline and you deciding, is this what is within God's plan or is this my plan? right? And recognizing that if it's God's plan, then your Lord will provide it, right? And he will provide it without debt. Or if it is in man's eyes a debt that you are obtaining to get it,
Mhm.
he's going to make sure that you have the resources to pay it.
Absolutely, Nicole. And again, I'm glad that you touched that stewardship point. I remember going through stewardship at the church financial stewardship, and again, I'm fully transparent. I'm like, I don't need this class, right? I finance background, things like that, but I've learned this is God's way, right? Doing it God's way, and then again, God talks about it, right? We know learning through stewardship that how many times did He mention money or currency in the Bible, right? So again,
Mhm.
it's it's a tool. So he wants us to know again that, hey, he recognizes that money will get our attention or resources, right? However that looks. But again, we can use that for his good because he provided that to us. And
Mhm.
so again, it's not about us too, it's also about giving back, right? Giving back and be able to resource and help one another. So again, we need that literacy, that education, and that spiritual stewardship to learn. And I tell everybody, right, I'm still learning. So again, with this invite here, right, Kathy and I, and yourself, like, we're always going to continue to grow and learn different techniques. Because again, people always ask you, this, what do you think about this person? It's all sound advice, but then you go back to the foundation, right? As you mentioned, stewardship. So it's there. So I like to tie it back to there. But excellent point, Nicole and Kathy, about bringing it
Well,
back
James,
to God.
you you mentioned Bible verses about money. I know for a fact that there are over
Yeah,
2,300 of them.
yes, I could remember. Yep,
More from stewardship,
yep.
more so than any other concept in the Bible, more so than love, more than salvation. So why?
Hmm.
I have my theory is that even more so than love, right? That God knew that we would mess up with money more than anything else in our lives. So
Hmm. Hmm.
there are so many scriptures.
Right.
And also, Nicole, I wanted to go back to something you were saying about, you know, stewardship and our values. When we align our spending and saving and when we align our finances with our personal values, um, from the mental standpoint, it can lead to more happiness, less regret when we follow the roadmap that God has already given us for stewardship. We have, James, you already said, we have everything we need, right here in the house, including that roadmap to financial stewardship.
So that's all good. And I want to go to the Bible,
Okay.
the acronym, the basic instructions before leaving the earth. We have a couple of comments that have come up from some of our viewers, and one around depression. Depression, as we had kind of talked about earlier on in our discussion, depression that is aligned to the grief and the loss of a spouse, and how this individual found themselves kind of spiraling between the debt and then overeating and weight and all of those things. And so one of the things that our Bishop Dwayne C. Debnam always says is that when you have a mental health problem, and grief is a mental health problem, but whatever your mental health problem may be, you can't drink it out, you can't smoke it out, you can't sex it out. In today's topic, you can't spend it out.
Mm,
Hmm.
You got to talk it out.
mm,
And so, if you find yourself, viewer, whoever you may be, that's having that kind of struggle where all of these things are going on because of your grief, I would really encourage you to seek some support immediately if you haven't already, because um, you don't want it to then spiral into something else that you begin to do because you're now in debt. Now you've overeaten, and so now I'm gonna start drinking.
mm, mm.
And a casual, a nightcap turns into all day long and all night. A glass of wine with dinner is something that becomes addictive, right? And so these are signs that for you, some things associated with grief are just impacting how you, and depression are just impacting how you are responding across the board. So you would definitely want to seek some support. Um, Outside of praying, what are some best practices that you recommend to ease the mind of physical stress? I'll take that one on. So,
Okay.
when you're under any type of stress or strain, the best thing you can do outside of praying is to move. Movement is the easiest way to increase your endorphins or your serotonin, your happy feelings, to send some pleasure to your frontal lobe movement. So that maybe go for a walk, that could be some type of physical exercise, but to move. Another thing that also helps that is free when it happens and it's a sunny day is sunlight.
Mm.
Go sit in the
That's fair.
sun,
That's
sunlight. The biggest thing, again, that can happen, and there are a lot of therapists are taking this tool. I just went to a workshop last week, as a matter of fact, and it was geared for it was the Turk conference, and it was geared for individuals who are in the addictions arena. But one of the things that's really big is nature therapy, right? When you can go out and just enjoy nature and those things that are natural, right? It said that we spent more than 9 months, our first 9 months of our lives, we were immersed in water. So for some people, going to sit by water is very, very therapeutic. For me, I'll be transparent. It's trees for me. Trees do it for me. So if I can go sit somewhere where there's a tree, I'm in a good space and just to think. So take advantage of nature. Those are some free tips that all increase your serotonin, your happy feelings, and that can help you if you're having some feelings of depression. So moving into our questions, I told y'all this was going to be good. We're down to
yeah.
10.
Oh
Oh my
wow.
goodness, this is good.
I feel like we just got started, Elder.
Yeah,
Right.
put those questions in the chat. We may not get to them
Okay.
all, but I can guarantee you that this is a topic in her absence that Dr. Debna may run back soon, because I'm sure people she's going to get a lot of good feedback on this one. So let's talk about this one. This is a good one to close in case we don't get to anything else. So back in our time, I'm showing my age, we had layaway, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna show my age again. If you were a parent and you're my age, you put those Christmas toys and all of that stuff on layaway, right? You put those back to school clothes on layaway, right?
Yeah.
To get them out for your kids.
Right.
Well, now, 21st century America, we have Afterpay. We have you can pay by PayPal. We have what's all the other ones?
Klarna, Affirm.
Klarna.
Yeah, Affirm, all those.
Affirm.
Yeah. Get it now.
Sezzle.
See,
come on now. Come on in here.
Instant gratification, right?
Instant gratification.
And that's a great subject. I know you may not be done, but I think about that all the time. I have this conversation with Mrs. Jones, but our parents, right? Again, it wasn't that layaway. I mean, I don't remember being the extra anxious fees and all. It was like, hey, you had to put your money down.
That part.
And it goes back to Kathy, what she said. It was a priority. What I had, my resources, this was important, right? Again, that same full transparency, those school clothes and Christmas, right? Going to pick it out, like, I want it now. And my mom like, no, we'll have to come back, right? But they put something down, came back, put something down, still took care of the house.
Put something on it.
Right. Right. I couldn't wait. I can't, but put something on it. It held it, right? It was a priority and it was in their budget.
It was in the budget. But tell me about Klarna. You don't put something on Klarna. No. You got to put something on Klarna every week.
every week, and they're gonna get it. I guess. I mean, I'm not sure work, but I know it's different platforms where you have to put something. You probably pay for it 2 or 3 times, and get like your time. Man, but again, that instant gratification, the resources, and that's that mindful. I would say like not mindful spending, right? You're just like, I get it, I want it, I need it, want to keep it up for the Joneses or whatever it may be, but I can get it now.
The other big
So,
thing
so
that's a
I'm gonna
concern, let
have
me
a
put this out here real quick, Kathy, real
Okay.
quick,
okay.
on that spending piece, because this is real big for me. People are doing it on this designer stuff, you guys, too. We weren't going and you weren't able to put some Ferragamo or Gucci or whatever on layaway. But now through these stores like Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom's, you people are actually using these for these designer, really expensive goods. And so again, what is your motivation behind that makes you think that that's what you need? I think that's a really, really important because it's going to come out over time. And if you just can't get the bag or the shoes or the belt or the shirt outright, or even if using an old fashioned principle, like putting something on it, is that the best way for you if you're already financially strapped? Kathy?
So let me offer a sort of balanced perspective with these buy now, pay later. They call it BNPL services. We call them Afterpay, Affirm, Klarna, Sezzle. Um, they don't necessarily have to be a bad thing. There are some pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, and depending on your financial situation, again, why I'm always about the why. Why are you using that? So that's where the mental health piece comes in. But it's not all bad because they sometimes they offer you can get things interest free rather than using, I would say, as opposed to a credit card where there's interest. You can get 4 interest free payments, but however, it's if you pay on time. Um, the BNPL platforms as opposed to credit cards. Another pro is that um, it usually doesn't require a hard credit check, but typically a soft one, or sometimes not even at all. And that could be good for people who have a limited credit history. So I understand why some, younger people use them to build up their credit history without it being, it can be a positive as opposed to a negative. You can also get approved very quickly, usually on, with these BNPLs in the store. And finally, you can, back to the layaway piece. So this is the good part about it. You can spread out, larger purchases over a period of time. If you don't have the full amount up front, if you don't have something to pay on it. And it can build up your credit, like I was saying before, if you're especially if you're using one of the long-term payment processes. So it's not all bad. It just depends on how you use it.
I don't think it's bad at all, but I think it's about, again, where you rest and making sure and what your intentions are and what your needs are. Because where it can become problematic is if you, for example, have a bunch of them. And they do come out automatically. And that could cause an overdraft fee. So it's a matter of you still, and so recognizing that there's a discipline that needs to come with that.
Right.
And that's where that whole literacy.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say it's a tool, right? And without going down the whole rabbit hole, right? Money is a tool. And so you rake up great points, right? Interest free, things like that, or spread your payments, but it's a tool. So what are my priorities? Why am I doing this? Again, right? But if you're doing this because you want those, to keep up with the Joneses, you want these nice bags, these nice shoes, these nice things, and then it's spiraling out of control, right? You'll go back to your why. But if
That's
you're
right.
right, yep, like Kathy, so
Hey,
no, expert that educated, I'm using it as a tool. Hey, right, I'm disciplined, and this allows me to get that expensive thing over time, interest-free payments. Right, that's your decision, that's your choice.
right.
But
No,
again,
know thyself. If you're an impulsive
yep,
spender, like Nicole was saying, yeah, maybe
yep,
this is
yep,
not for
no,
you.
a
Because
tool.
what you get one, just take it. Let's just like
Sure.
credit cards. How many
Yep.
people have just one credit card?
Right.
Those people have several, right? So you
Yeah.
can apply that same,
Logic.
mindset to, oh well, this is easy for me to get. I can get one, so I can
Mhm,
have all four of them.
mhm,
And now
mhm.
you're owing on
Well,
everything. So
that's true. That's true.
know yourself, know your limits.
Know
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
We have one more question in
Okay.
the chat, and we have about 5 minutes to answer that. And I do want to touch it because it is a serious question.
Okay.
And that is there's a comment that talks about being unequally yoked with a spouse
Mhm.
in regards to your financial struggles.
Mm.
Right.
Okay.
And
Right.
so, of course, that can be a challenge if you have a significant other who you're not on the same page with
Mhm.
spending. Would you
Mhm.
guys like to talk in either way about that and what your experience will be or any advice that you would have?
Sure. I'll kick this one off, and that's a great question. Thanks for the transparency there. So, I think when you get married or you're dating, whatever, but we'll just say married since this situation with your spouse, in the beginning, it's important to talk about that, right? Even before you get married, if you do premarital counseling, and again, if you can take that opportunity to talk about it there. But if you didn't, even now, normally I would say there's a one person that's kind of probably financially strong in a relationship and someone they're not. You rarely, again, you may have two people that are, but normally you have two people with different experiences and different strengths. But most importantly, now you become one. And again, I don't people ask what you should have one bank account, one thing. You have to do what works for you, but you have to talk about it. You have to write, communicate it. Write your plan and go back to what Kathy said. Hey, are you sitting down monthly or annually? For me, I always say we sit down at the beginning of the year and we talk about what we want to accomplish for that year, right? If it's vacation, if it's spending, if it's investing, how does that look? So everyone has a voice, right? And again, if there was someone strong or whatever, but it's a spouse, you're one. You're one unit. And finances, we know can cause tremendous strain in relationships. Cause right? I'm sure you hear that a lot, the financial strain. So to answer this question, communicate, talk about it, find a safe space, right? If someone's strong in finance, and encourage them, allow them to participate in that monthly spending, however that looks, right? Share the bills with them. Hey, this is our mortgage, this is our rent, this is how much coming into the account, this is how much we need to take, right? And kind of teach and educate them, have them understanding, because you're one team. So
Yeah,
I'll
I,
give you
I
a
agree. And depending on how different you are, there may be a need for a mediator intervention. Back
good.
where we were saying a financial consultant, educator, because sometimes we don't hear what our mate is saying, and someone else who is maybe considered a more of an authority figure in the subject can say the same thing, and that person can receive it, and then you can start to work together.
And then to just to kind of wrap that thought up, and then similarly, if the tension is to the point where it's putting a strain on your marriage, I would definitely encourage you to seek marriage counseling.
Mhm.
I would encourage you to build some natural relationships with other couples. If you're at Morningstar, we have a couples ministry. I'm one of the co-leads for the couples ministry, so we do have a couples ministry. If you're not at Morningstar, you don't have to be a member of Morningstar, and it is a couples ministry, so it is for people who are married and dating. So you want to try to surround yourself with places that could encourage you and your spouse. Then the other thing that I want to say is if let's say it's just not that heavy, but it is a just an issue, then you need to be open enough with each other as husband and wife to maximize each other's strengths. And so then if you're the one, if someone pays the bills better, then that's the one who should be responsible for those types of things to make sure that you are meeting your credit goals, to make sure that your credit is under control, to make sure that this is the person that does pay these bills, to make sure that you're putting yourself on a spending allowance or a budget of how much you are spending for your entertainment, for your leisurely activities and things of that nature. So it is important that you sit down and communicate. Um, Communication and finances are two of the three things that are marriage killers. The third is intimacy. But if you're not talking, um, then you're not going to spend money right, and you're definitely not going to want to connect on a level of intimacy, because there's tension there. So it is important that you put some things in place and that you reach out. And this is what this forum is for. This forum is designed, um, Dr. Carla Debnam, in her wisdom, designed this forum for us to be able to have some casual, candid conversations to spark an interest for people, and a dialogue to kind of do things a little bit different and see where they may need to seek additional help to be fine tuned. So, with that being said, it is 8 o'clock, and I thank you, Kathy Evans and James Jones, for this rich, rich dialogue. We look forward to seeing all of our viewers next month, at the next RC chat. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram for any of our upcoming events. And my name is Nicole Wallace, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a
Hi,
pleasure.
it was a pleasure. Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good night.